Just hoping that they get some stops, and they played out of this world. And again, that is the best defense in the country. I'm saying it. Everyone should be saying it. We have the best defense in the country.
Well, after what we saw versus Maryland, maybe the Owls can make that argument after all. They're moving up the ranks.
And now it's off to Buffalo for Saturday's first road trip. Inside the Nest is live, and it starts right now.
Hello and welcome to yet another live edition of Inside the Nest alongside Dan Wilson. I am Brooklyn Vaughn, and boy, we've got a lot to talk about today.
We'll break down Buffalo and take you live at Edberg Olson Hall for Rod Carey's weekly press conference. But first, let's take a look back at Temple's win over Maryland on Saturday, as it was not as advertised. Two prolific offenses didn't have it their way. Instead, it was all about crazy defense and iffy special teams right up until the end. Number 21, Maryland coming in to play the Owls at the Link. New quarterback, new coach for Maryland. First drive, quarterback Josh Jackson for Maryland throws an interception to Harrison Hand, the first pick of the season. Owls trying to turn that into points. Russo has a man open. Who else? Isaiah Wright hauls in the first points of the game. Owls up 7-0. Owls gave up 2 points on a safety before a scoreless second quarter. Second half now. The always dangerous Anthony McFarland breaks through to the end zone, and he gives the Terps the lead. But that lead lasted all of 21 seconds. Russo finds Jaden Blue down the sideline, makes the safety miss, and he is gone. Owls lead 13-9. Jackson finds Tyler Mabry to regain the lead. The PAT was blocked here, though. Maryland 15, Owls 13. To the fourth quarter we go. Kenny Yeboah. This guy was so open, Anthony Russo nearly missed him. Yeboah hangs on, gives the Owls a 20-15 lead. And we're going to go to the other end of the field here now. After 3 consecutive run plays, Maryland has 4th and goal at the 1-yard line for the lead. And Sean Bradley stuffs McFarland. Ensuing drive, Maryland forces a Temple 3-and-out. The Owls punt with 3 minutes left. Adam Berry's punt, it netted just 7 yards. Maryland has another chance at it, taking the lead. Starting at the 10, comes down to this. Jackson and company versus the Owls defense. And once again, the Owls defense wins this matchup. Maryland, it showed it can't run in the red zone in the last possession, so they go to the air. The catch is way out of bounds. Owls had to run 4 plays to expire the remaining final 2 minutes and change, including an intentional safety on the final play. Final score of this one, Owls take down 21st ranked Maryland 20-17. They are now 2-0 on the season.
Defense played phenomenal. We were clutching our fitness for a bit, just hoping that they get some stops, and they played out of this world. And again, that is the best defense in the country. I'm saying it. Everyone should be saying it.
I think we have one of the best defenses in the country, and I'll stand by that no matter what. You know, a team like them that's putting up 71 points a game in the first 2 weeks to come out here and play them the way they did, and not only that, but have 2 stops in the red zone down by the goal line at the end of the game in crunch time. You know, I don't think our defense could have played much better, and I owe them one because, you know, when the offense wasn't going, the defense was right there to pick us up.
It's a testament to our defense again. You know, our D-line played excellent today. They were getting pushed back, and they just created a lane for me, and I did my job. We all did our job, and I ended up making the play. So could have been any of us.
No, I was extremely happy with how the corners played. The whole defense. I mean, really, you got a team that's averaging some ridiculous number coming in, and to hold them to 13 because you know offense scored 24 today, so was really good.
And Maryland's stay inside the top 25 was cut short by the Owls on Saturday. The Terrapins' #1 ranked offense prior to Saturday's game was shut down by Temple's defense. Quarterback Josh Jackson only completed about 40% of his passes, averaging a meager 4.8 yards per attempt. He did connect with tight end Tyler Mabry for his only touchdown pass, but he was unable to find a rhythm through the air after throwing an interception on Maryland's first drive of the game. Anthony McFarland Jr. continued his impressive season on the ground, rushing for 132 yards and a touchdown against the Owls. McFarland got Maryland's offense rolling in the second half when he scored on a 4-yard run early in the third quarter. Shifting now to Temple's offense, quarterback Anthony Russo averaged 7.5 yards per attempt and threw his 3 touchdown passes to 3 different Owls receivers: Isaiah Wright, Jaden Blue, and the game-winning touchdown pass to Kenny Yabella. Russo's touchdown to Jaden Blue was a 79-yarder, which broke his previous career long of 70 yards. Ramon Davis led Temple's balanced attack with 92 yards on 15 attempts, while Jagger Gardner ran for 82 yards on 16 attempts. And we now go live to Inside the Nest beat reporter Ray Dunn, who kicks off our team coverage live at Edberg Olson Hall to tell us more about the Owls' impressive defensive performance this weekend.
Hey, Ray.
Thanks, guys. Temple came into Saturday's game winless at home against Maryland in program history. The Owls were tasked with slowing down one of the most dominant offenses in all of college football through the first 2 weeks. And it took all of 4 downs and all 4 quarters to do it.
Maybe number one. For myself, since I've been starting, definitely number one. That's the best I've seen us fly around and play all together as a unit. So
the storylines going into the matchup between Temple and Maryland had a lot to do with what the offenses had done so far this season. But after 4 defensive stops on 4th down, the Owls flew out of the link with an upset win on the backs of the defensive unit.
I think they thrive off it. I don't think it's dealing with pressure. I think it's loving the moment. Is what their attitude is and our attitude is. You train all this time to be in moments like that.
Of the 3 times Temple stopped Maryland on 4th and goal, 2 of them came in the 4th quarter. And the one that felt the biggest was Sean Bradley shooting the gap and stopping Anthony McFarland on a short goal line attempt.
While it wasn't the play that clinched the win, the second goal line stand of the game preserved the Owls' lead and forced Maryland to use crucial timeouts while Temple's offense tried to run the clock out.
It's a testament to our defense again. You know, our D-line played excellent today. They were getting pushed back, and they just created a lane for me. And I did my job. We all did our job, and I ended up making the play.
Man, it's like a rush of adrenaline. It's a crazy rush. At that point, you're not even thinking anymore. You're just rushing.
The Owls locked up the win when Josh Jackson and DJ Turner failed to connect inbounds on a 4th down pass to the end zone. With that final stop, the Owls had picked up their 4th stop on 4th down and a momentous non-conference victory.
Those crucial moments are a big reason why the Owls now have won back-to-back games against the Big Ten for the first time in program history. They also start 2-0 for the first time since 2015. Reporting live from Edberg Olson Hall, I'm Ray Dunn, OwlSports Update.
Thank you, Ray. We'll see if the Owls can keep up that defensive performance on Saturday.
We'll get to Saturday's matchup later in the show, but before we do that, we have to highlight Temple making its way closer to the top 25. Owls receive a ranking votes, 34 in the country, knocking off a ranked team in Maryland, on the radar as an AAC team. AAC Defensive Player of the Week, Harrison Hand. He had 10 tackles and an interception. And wide receiver Randall Jones and cornerback Linwood Crump were scratched against Maryland, and keep an eye out as their health progresses throughout the week. A win is a win, but there's certainly a lot to work on if you're Rod Carey. And really, that's a coach's dream. Beat a nationally ranked team, but still have many reasons to show the team how they really need to be better.
Yeah, let's talk, Dan, about what went right and what went brutally wrong for the Owls this week. We'll start off with special teams. Coach Carey, he put it best himself, and I quote, "They were just bad." Flagged for offsides on the kickoff, a kickoff out of bounds, a muffed punt return, 7-yard punt, a missed field goal, and more. It was just not pretty to watch on the special teams end.
Yeah, punt hit Freddie Johnson, Jagger Gardner fumbled. Russo had 1 interception, 1 got called back, got a little bailed out. Maryland had too many men on the field. A lot of sloppiness that needs to be cleaned up.
Well, let's talk about what did go very well for the Owls, their goal line stands. They were crucial in this win. 3 goal line stands. These are the headlines of the game, 2 of them coming late in the 4th, and that helps the Owls seal the deal. Well, it is break time, but stay tuned. We'll be heading back live to Edberg Olson Hall to hear what Rod Carey has to say about Maryland and Temple's first road trip to Buffalo.
Inside the Nest will be back in 90 seconds. Welcome back to Inside the Nest. It's almost time for us to bring you back to Edberg Olson Hall, where Rod Carey will be taking the podium.
Yeah, Rod Carey just moments away. There you see that empty podium, soon to be in Rod Carey's presence back at Edberg Olson Hall. Dan, let's talk about what you expect to hear out of him today. Obviously coming off that huge Maryland win, but looking forward to Buffalo. What do you expect to hear out of him?
Yeah, a lot. We kind of talked about it there in the last segment, a lot on the turnovers. You know, Anthony Russo, as decision-making has really been a big thing for him coming last season. He threw 14 interceptions, threw one against Bucknell, had one in this game and nearly had a second. Maryland had too many men on the field, which kind of bailed them out. And also there were 2 turnovers that were not even on the fault of Anthony Russo. Jagger Gardner put a ball on the ground and a ball hit Freddie Johnson on a punt.
Yeah, you know, speaking of quarterbacks, let's take a look over to Buffalo on the Buffalo side. Their redshirt quarterback, Matt Myers, definitely not their strong suit, and that's not making it easy on them with the defensive line that performed like Temple's did this past week. Obviously, they're going to let guys like Sean Bradley go ahead and have their take at quarterback Matt Myers. Yeah,
this is certainly something that should play into the hands of the Owls. Defensive line play, especially against Maryland, was very, very strong. They run the ball more than any team in the MAC, or they're averaging more rushing yards than any team in the MAC, and they pass the ball the least of any team in the MAC. Clearly, their new freshman quarterback, Matt Myers, not their strong suit, and they're kind of afraid to go to that. But I did want to also allude more on the reliance of the run game and how it's going to play into Temple. This was a Maryland team at the end of the game who runs 4 runs, and Sean Bradley stuffs them on 4th and goal. So we're now looking at a team where if you're Temple, this is really the team you kind of want to face. Maybe Buffalo is a little bit worse of an opponent in terms of, who you're, if you're going against Maryland versus you're going up against Buffalo. This is a game where you're going on the road. It's going to be a lot harder than playing against Maryland at home, but this is a place to maybe fix some of those mistakes and still get away with another Week 3 win.
For sure. So, something that I find interesting with this coaching staff, this entire roster, they continue to preach on their point of every game they go into 0-0. Obviously coming off with huge momentum after this win over number 21, previously ranked Maryland. How do you think that that's going to translate into the energy that they bring up to Buffalo this weekend? Yeah, I wouldn't expect a huge letdown this week, or you would at least hope if you're an Owls fan that there isn't much of a letdown this week. It is their first road trip of this season. As we saw with Maryland, they had 2 home games that they played extraordinarily well in, and then they come to Temple and their offense basically takes the day off. Right. So if you're an Owls fan, you really hope that same thing is, and you hope you take a page out of Maryland's book as of what not to do. This is not a joke of a Buffalo team, even though they have a new quarterback and their run game kind of plays in the hand of the Owls. They do have a really solid head coach in Lance Leipold. He signed a 5-year extension. I believe we're getting Rod Carey now, but he signed a 5-year extension, MAC Coach of the Year. Let's listen in on what Carey has to say.
Buffalo now. It's Tuesday after practice. So all of my thoughts are there, but I will go back real quick for you guys to Maryland. Obviously, like I said after the game, we're happy with the win. We got in and really dove into what we need to get corrected, and there was plenty to get corrected off that film. And the guys have responded well, made those corrections yesterday, and then also yesterday moved on to Buffalo. And then today, full ahead on Buffalo with those corrections. And the thing about corrections is you just got to go out and do them and practice them and practice them and practice them, and then usually get the good result when you do it that way. And the guys have done a good job. Thought today was a good day of practice. School is in full force right now, and guys have papers to do, and some guys were up late. There were some tired people out there this morning on the practice field, but I liked the way that they pushed. I really did. It was very, very workmanlike, and was really impressed with still communicating, locked in, and pushing. And so I was really happy with that practice today, and then we'll get back to work, and we'll get back out there tomorrow. So with that, guys, we'll open it up for questions.
What's it like playing these guys now? I know it's different, but you beat them in the conference championship game, came back on them. River team last year. How similar or different are they from last year?
Well, the core of their team is built the exact same. Coach Leopold does a great job. He understands you build from inside out. This is the best O&D line we have faced to date. And I have no problem saying that. They have 4 or 5 starters returning up front on offense, and their D-line is long, athletic on the edges, and inside very stout and strong. So he's been there now. I think this is his 5th, maybe his 6th year, but he's recruited that way, and you can see that on film over and over again. and their backs are dynamic. You know, obviously they lost 2 big wide receivers, a tight end, a quarterback. On offense, those guys are tough to replace. They were certainly dynamic players, and they lost what, in my estimation, was an outstanding middle linebacker last year to graduation. So some of those guys are tough to replace, but the guys who were playing out there are very skilled as well. So I look at it and I see a really good football team, and I know that their record probably isn't what they want it to be at this point, but certainly they have our full attention in every way, shape, or form because how the film looks.
You talked about the corrections. How many of those were on special teams?
A lot. I mean, you got the one where it hits and hits Freddie and then they recover. Listen, the ball is oblong, right? It's going to bounce weird. There's a communication thing that we can probably get a little bit better there, but you never know where the ball is going to bounce when it hits the ground. The missed tackle was disappointing, you know, especially when we had him. So doing some drills to do that. The other things with the snapper and with the punter are just really football IQ things that they're both smart football players. They just need to relax and play, and we've showed them that. We've gone over that. We're doing some things different in practice as far as when we're doing things, try to gain everyone's attention and get those things taught a little better. And so we're doing our part, they're doing their part, and it's just a matter of reps now.
You mentioned that LaFree was still sort of maybe in the mix to compete with Will for that spot.
Yeah, he is now this week. Yeah, he is now this week. He's still banged up a touch, but he's at a point where he feels like he can swing for field goals too. So yesterday and today, they've been competing a lot for that field goal job. So I don't have the numbers from today. I know yesterday the numbers were about even. I don't have the numbers from today yet.
Rod, when you come off a game of a ranked team, a Big Ten team, and everyone's telling you how good you are as a coach, how do you balance like keeping your kids' heads kind of straight, knowing that they're going to hear all these compliments and everything?
2 things, and I just shared this with them, and I got no problem telling you guys. 1, turn on the film of Buffalo. That's what you need to be paying attention to, right? They catch your attention on that, especially up front, like I said. And 2, you know, at Temple, we were not successful last year versus Buffalo. So I know it's new teams, new situations, but that's still there. So, I mean, if they don't have your attention, they should. And so that's what I told them.
Coach, Anthony Russo faced adversity against Maryland on the quarter 3 interception. He came back with a touchdown to Kenny Yeboah. What was your takeaway from Russo's ability to step up through adversity?
Yeah, well, the one interception that got called back and then ended up not being an interception, that was the one that really, the decision-making, I didn't like, and I told him, I said, we got to know, we can't think. The other one, as I looked at it on film, that was a great play by that linebacker. Like, he's going the right place with the ball, and yeah, you'd like the route to come under him, but linebacker made a heck of a play. He was going the right place with the ball. So that's the decision making on those 2 things, but I thought he stayed calm, cool, collected, and in the moment, knowing that not everything's going to go his way all the time, but you know, he certainly stayed locked in, and that's what allowed us on that last drive to really go down the field.
We kind of got in the lost in the mix of special team struggles because Ty Mason, came out of nowhere really saved that touchdown on the punt return.
Yeah.
How critical is it to have a player like him back for an entire game?
Yeah, well, he's going to add a lot to us on special teams. We missed him for sure in the first half, and he takes special teams and very personally and doing a good job on defense too. So it's just nice to have him back in the mix and getting in the flow.
Isaiah, fair call out every punt. Does he need to be more aggressive, or was there?
No, we told him to. We put a tag on it too, and he was doing exactly what he was coached to do because after the first one, we didn't know what the punts were going to look like. They were going to spray it around a little bit, so then we had to peel off because we didn't want our guys to get hit in the back again with the ball, right? Well, and then they start kicking them straight. So it was a cat and mouse game, but in the end, Isaiah did a great job of catching the ball and making sure we had the ball after they were punting it, which was a huge part of the game.
Coach, I was wondering if you could talk about Efon a little bit. He's going to get the National Defensive Player Award a little bit. Just maybe talk about what you've seen from him.
That's good for Ifan. I'm glad for him. That's first. I didn't know that. I think, like I told you after the game, someone asked me, what can you say about Ifan? I can say this is that, you know, he beat out a really good player in Karamo. Karamo plays a lot for us, if you've noticed. He's on the field a lot for us, and he's a fifth-year senior. Karamo's a leader on this team and everything, and Ifan beat him out. And so that competition there has just spurred both of them to be better, and Ifan is playing at a high level right now, which I'm extremely happy about. And he is too.
How much better has he gotten? When you first got here and you're looking at the roster and you look at what you have and him then to where he is now, where's the improvement been, or did he just stand out to you right away when you got here?
Well, I think we knew there was some God-given talent there, right? Where he's improved is how he prepares and how he practices. That's really put him, because I'm not surprised by this in games, because I see it every day in practice. I get that advantage, right? And I know you guys are, because you guys aren't at our practice, right? But I'm not surprised. He works, so that's probably the biggest difference is he's learned how to work. He's learned how to practice, and that's showing up.
Injury updates from Saturday.
A little banged up with a couple guys, bumps and bruises. So we held a couple guys today. Held Ifan, Q, and Vince Picozzi, just bumps and bruises, really. But they should be back and rolling tomorrow. Really, that's the only major update. There isn't anybody. Randall, thank you. Randall ran today. I was hoping he'd be further along than he was today. Just watching him run. I haven't talked to the docs about it, just my eye. I was hoping he's favoring it a little bit too. So it might go into next week. I hope it doesn't, but it might go into next week. We're going to run him again tomorrow, treat him. He's doing a great job of treating and rehabbing. He's just got to respond.
You've gotten a lot of mileage out of kind of a two-headed monster running back. Talk a little bit about that and how that helps the offense.
Well, in today's college football, I'd like to even see Dobbins earn his way back in there and on that thing too. But you have to have that because there's a lot of wear and tear on those guys, and I think that competition is really pushing those two to be better too. So really happy with Ray and really happy with Jagger, and like I said, I'd like to see Dobbins get in there a little bit more too. And Isaiah, we didn't put him in the backfield this week. That was for a couple different reasons, but we like to do that with him too and create that depth, right? Because just a lot of wear and tear, but really happy with how those two are progressing.
Yeah, special teams, I know when Coach Foley left, he said you kind of spread out the responsibilities, and now you have an associate coordinator and an analyst. How have you kind of pieced that together for staff-wise?
Just like that. We have full-time coaches that are in charge of each phase, and that's how I did it for most of my career. Instead of having a coordinator, even though the last couple of years at NIU I had a on-field coordinator. So that's nothing new. The meetings run the same as they did in the spring, as they did in years past, whether we had a coordinator or not. The meetings run the same. The information gets disseminated the same way. The practice gets the same way. So it's it's that end of it. We're getting everything done that we need to get done. Now we got to do a better job of getting the kids to understand it and execute it better. And that's on us.
Okay. Coach,
yep.
Just a real quick question. So we're dealing with a system of running backs compared to a single running back. As you guys currently play, what type of, from your standpoint, what type of coaching goes into having to monitor a lot of players from the backfield?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we're probably in the majority as opposed to the minority in today's football period, NFL or college, that everybody does it by committee because of the wear and tear there. So there are specific plays that we like one of the guys to run over the other. There are specific personnel groupings we want them to do, specific skill sets that we want them to do. And then with all that being said, we like to monitor reps. Obviously, we would play a hot hand later. And Ray has been in there probably a little bit more with the all-around stuff. But all those factors go into it during the game. That's a constant communication thing.
You did mix on Saturday. You mixed in a lot of defensive line. You weren't afraid to go to Chris Banks, DeAndre Kelly early. How much might sound like a dumb question, but how crucial is that in keeping your starters fresh? And you guys were able to get a lot of pressure without really bringing a lot of risk.
Yeah, and we've played a lot of total snaps defensively in the first 2 games. But when you take who's taken how many reps, really each person's played about 1 game, which is good, and that pays huge dividends as the season goes throughout the course of the year.
How much are you looking forward to playing your first away game of the season?
Yeah, good question. It's certainly something we addressed with the team. It's not their first road game. It's not my first road game, but it's our first road game together. So there's going to be a little different schedule to it than they're probably used to. And I'm probably, because we kind of came up with it together. And then we'll talk about it, discuss it, know what to expect. But for us, it's a business trip. And I enjoy the road personally. You kind of get away from, all the... And listen, family's great, and I always have a ton of family in too, and the guys do as well, but it's kind of good. You get away and you're separate. You're just together as a team and a staff. So I'm looking forward to it.
Does it help bond the players and the coaching staff? I think so.
Yeah, just time spent, right? Builds relationships. So kind of captive audiences, we're there, they're there. It's kind of builds the relationship.
Coach, I know Illinois won last year by a point to Buffalo. What are some of the constants and some of the differences you expect to see against a Buffalo team this season?
Well, like I said earlier, the O-line and D-line are the constants that I see the through thread in their team. The schemes, obviously, their coordinators are the same and familiar with that, but really it comes down to the players, and they're good in every position. Just because I'm pointing out O and D-line doesn't mean that I don't think they're good in every position. They certainly are. It's just the O-line and D-line pop off the page to you there. And so those are the constants that we see as the through thread from last year to this year.
Okay. All right, there you have it.
Thanks,
that
guys.
was Rod Carey live from Edberg Olson Hall. We are now joined by Inside the Nest reporter Dom Gillespie at the desk to break down Carey's presser for us even further.
How's it going, Dom?
Hi guys, how you doing?
So, Dom, first question right off the bat. So you heard him kind of allude to, and this is a team in Temple that played against Buffalo last season and lost to them in week 2. And some similarities, some differences. They have a new quarterback, same coach and same kind of system. One big thing that Carey just hit on is that other than the core being similar to last year, that the offensive and defensive lines for Buffalo really kind of pop off the page, and that's the strength that the Owls had against Maryland. Are you expecting a kind of battle in the trenches here, and how do you think that bodes for the Owls?
I for sure do. Carey said in his press conference that this is the best O-line and D-line that they've played to date, and that's got to pay dividends coming off a top-ranked Maryland team who did have a very strong defensive and offensive performances in weeks 1 and 2. And like you said, just to reiterate, the Owls cannot overlook Buffalo. We lost them last year. The Owls lost them last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of that loss last year, Rod Carey did address that today to the media. He also addressed that they had a lot of loss on their key players this year. This is a new-look Buffalo team, not the same team that they're facing off against. How do you think that they're preparing for that change?
The Owls had a lot of problems with injuries going into this week. Linwood, Crump, and Randall Jones were late-game scratches against Maryland, and I don't even know if we got a comment about Crump. I guess that's good news.
No, he didn't mention it, yeah.
Didn't mention him at all. I guess that means he was active today. Randall Jones, he said he's unhappy with his progression. Ifan, one of the best defensive linemen that played that game, he did leave that game early with cramps, but he did return later, so I think he's good moving forward as well.
Do you have any sense on the mentality of this Owls team? They're 2-0. They're going on the road for the first time. Buffalo, at least on paper, definitely a weaker opponent than Maryland was. You think getting away, and you heard Carey allude to it, just turn on the film, don't listen to the outside noise. What do you think the mentality of the Owls is going in this one?
Buffalo's going to be a huge gut check for the Owls. I thought Maryland was going to be too. It's just how you can bounce back from this. 2 home games to start the season could be detrimental in the long run. going on the road and seeing how we play against Buffalo, who is, Carrie said, is a pretty good team, will be a great indicator of how the rest of the season will go for Temple.
All right, well, thank you so much, Dom. Let's switch gears here, going from the head coach to the players now. We talked to them after practice on Tuesday. Maryland's in the rearview mirror, and Buffalo is on deck. Let's see how they're preparing for their business trip this Saturday.
Oh, yeah, I've seen Buffalo's offense live. They're big, they're heavy, they're aggressive. At some times they may have played a little dirty aggressively, but all we got to do is keep the wild boy mentality and just keep fighting.
You know, all that matters is us. All that matters is we go out there, we execute like we're supposed to. We run the plays we're supposed to. We do the assignments we're supposed to, and we'll be fine. So just preaching to them, you know, don't worry about the outside things, the crowd, the different scenery, the different setting, whatever it is. Don't worry about any of that. Just worry about, you know, going out and doing our assignment each play.
Yeah, their offensive lineman is really good. You know, they're really aggressive, really physical, really tough. They're really downhill, and Buffalo always brings it. Even Coach Carey said he played it multiple years. They always bring it. They brought it last year to us, so definitely not underestimating them. Definitely going to be a good opponent.
Watching film, they're very physical. D-line's real physical. Linebackers like to fit the run. Even the safeties like to come down and play the run. So we know they're going to be a tough test for us. We got to go up to their place first away game. We got a lot of young guys that are going to have their first experience at an away game. So you know, we got to be locked in from the start and be ready to go up there and match their intensity. The way that turned out last year, we know what it felt like walking off that field after a loss last year. And we don't want to have that same feeling walking off the field this year. So we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that we don't walk off the field with that same losing feeling like we did last year.
During practice, we want to keep pushing ourselves. You know what I'm saying? We know what we're capable of. We know what potential we have, and we want to get better because there's a lot of mistakes we made out there on Saturday, and there's a lot of things we got to correct. So we're going to get back to the basics, start over again, and really push ourselves this week. Just being a little more aggressive, more physical, you know what I'm saying? There's sometimes I feel like we might have took plays off or got out our gaps a little bit, got a little tired. Nothing too crazy, but definitely we want to push ourselves more because we can be a lot better, fly around more. I want all of us to the ball this time, not just 5 or 6 of us. I want the whole 11 of us to the ball.
Be a lot better, Sean Bradley says, and that's exactly what the Owls will do as they look to avenge last year's loss to Buffalo on Saturday. Now, we do need to take a timeout right now, but do not go anywhere.
Yeah, when we come back, we talk to a former Owl who now covers the Bulls. He gets paid for it. For News 8 reporter Alexa Ross, she will join us coming up next, live from Rochester, New York. Inside the Nest, we'll be back in 90 seconds. Welcome back to Inside the Nest.
In 2018, the Bulls took down the Owls at the Link. Let's go ahead and take a look back at last year's matchup. This was a low point for the Owls. Remember this guy right here? Jeff Collins looking a little nervous, and rightfully so. Not much action in the first quarter from either team until Tyree Jackson connects with Charlie Jones for a 33-yard touchdown to put the Bulls on the board first. And here's Kevin Marks with the 22-yard rushing touchdown. The then freshman ends with 25 carries on the day for 138 yards. And at this point, the Bulls are 0 for 2 on PAT attempts. Now let's turn to the Owls on offense. Frank Newtile scrambles in the pocket and breaks free. And all of that coverage in the end zone is no concern for Brandon Mack with the complete 39-yard touchdown pass. And check this out. Ty Mason blocks the punt and gets into the end zone to cut the Bulls' lead. Temple goes for the 2-point conversion here, and they're going to do it in style. Check this out. Newtile flips it to Ventel Bryant. Bryant is pressured on the run, but he finds an open Kenny Yeboah. Bryant with the complete pass to Yeboah to tie it up. Well, that's something you don't see every day, huh? Buffalo isn't having it, though. They take the lead back with this touchdown pass to Anthony Nunn. Bulls up 29-22. Temple finds their way back into the end zone just as quick, though, and Brandon Mack scores his second touchdown of the day. Late in the fourth, the Bulls are doing their best to break the tie and take the lead. Anthony Johnson stays on his feet for a 29-yard touchdown to seal the deal. That Temple defense looking much different than what we saw this past week against Maryland. The Owls lose this one 36-29.
The Owls' rocky 2018 start continued at the Link. Remember, this loss dropped the Owls to 0-2 on the year. Buffalo got the better of Temple and Frank Newtile's last start as the Owls quarterback. Newtile completed just under 50% of his passes en route to a shaky day under center. The former single-digit quarterback threw 3 touchdowns but had 2 interceptions in this one, including a fumble on Temple's last drive of the game that sealed the Owls' fate. This was the Brandon Mack breakout game, however. Mack hurled in a Hail Mary from Newtile at the end of the first for one of his 2 touchdown catches. Raquel Armstead was a formidable threat on the ground for Temple averaging 7 yards per rush and eclipsing the century mark for the first of 6 times throughout the season. Tyree Jackson, who declared for the 2019 NFL Draft, was dominant for the Bulls in this one. Jackson aired out 275 yards for 3 touchdowns and completed a pass to 8 different Bulls receivers. Running back Kevin Marks 8 on the ground, rushing him for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns. We'll have more on him in a bit. The story of the game came down to third down. Buffalo converted on 9 of 17 third down attempts. Owls defense just could not get off the field, while the Owls only converted 3 of 14.
As we fast forward back to 2019, we are now joined by former Inside the Nest reporter, Klein College graduate, and now current sports anchor at News 8 in Rochester, New York, Alexa Ross.
Hey, Alexa.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be a great matchup.
Of course. Now, Alexa, this is the second straight year these two teams are squaring up. Temple is a new coach. Both teams are starting new quarterbacks than a season ago. Give us a summary of Buffalo football in the past year and just kind of an overview of the program as a whole.
Absolutely. Buffalo had their best season last season. They went 10-4, and they won the East Division of the MAC. They lost the championship game to Northern Illinois. And if you recognize that name, you know it because head coach Rod Terry came from Northern Illinois. He was the coach at the time, so he had a little bit more of an in-depth scouting report of Buffalo, but of course, it's a much newer team this season.
Yeah, Alexa, the Bulls have had a rough start to their 2019 campaign, as we've seen. What has stuck out to you, though, on the field that's led them to this 1-2 record?
Definitely the fact that they have a new quarterback. Tyree Jackson, he stayed in Buffalo. He went through the draft, was signed by the Bills. He was ultimately released, but they have a quarterback in Mike Myers. Pretty young offense. It's going to be something that Rod Terry has seen before in his in-game situation. But a little bit more season with Buffalo being 1-2, one of their opponents, Liberty, absolutely dominated the Bulls. Liberty was shut out by 24-0 in their first game, and that just shows that how Buffalo is putting together the pieces and how their playbook is absolutely shifting.
Alexa, you've gotten a look at this Buffalo team for about 3 weeks now. Who are the players we should be keeping an eye on?
My first player is Kevin Marsh. You guys mentioned him before, sophomore running back. Last year, he rushed for 845 yards and has reached a third of that number this season. Lance Leipold has already trusted him with that kind of responsibility, and he could pop off at this point. Everyone's trying to get their first touchdown of the season, you know? My second player was blocked with safety Joey Banks. The senior has been a key spin on the defense so far. He has 8 tackles, half on his own, half assisted, and a forced fumble. He's 5'10", 100 pounds. He could be an interesting matchup against somebody as athletic as Isaiah Wright.
Yeah, Alexa, we know this is not the same team Buffalo faced by any means last season. Do you think Buffalo can pull off the upset, though, against Temple this week? What's your prediction?
You know, as much as I'd love to see an upset on the part of Buffalo, I have to say my Owls are going to do it. I'm going to go 34-10 Temple.
All right, sounds good. Now it looks like you're having a great time up in Rochester, but our executive producer, Matt Fine, wants to know, we want to know here in TV Studio 3, Alexa, do you miss us?
Absolutely. I miss you guys so much.
Well, as always, a pleasure to talk with a former Inside the Nest reporter and someone who can give us a preview on the Owls' next opponent.
Thank you so much, Alexa. Come back to TV3 anytime. Matt Fine says, we say as well.
Yeah, you just heard Alexa's players to watch, and we're about to give you ours as well.
Let's take a look at one offensive and one defensive player who you should be keeping your eyes on this Saturday. You just heard Alexa mention sophomore running back Kevin Marks, but watch out for Buffalo's other sophomore running back, Jarrett Patterson. Patterson makes up the other half of the Bulls' rushing attack and has accounted for the most rushing attempts on the team with 52. He's averaging 4.1 yards per rush so far this season and found the end zone for his only touchdown against Robert Morris in Week 1. Well, don't sleep on Patterson as a pass catcher either. He's snagged 3 catches for 28 yards out of the backfield for the Bulls.
I'm going to go to the defensive side. Going to go with other safety Tyrone Hill. Now, like Joey Banks, he's not only good in coverage, but this guy knows how to find the ball carrier. He's tied for the lead, or the team lead in tackles with 16 tackles. However, that can be a misleading stat. Don't let the stats fool you. Hill is susceptible to being burned, both safeties are, to being burned by the deep ball. Look for Russo to take advantage of this downfield and try and abuse the Buffalo secondary come Saturday. Now we have to take another timeout, but don't go anywhere.
We're going no huddle when we come back. Welcome back to Inside the Nest. It's time to speed things up.
That's right, we're going no huddle. 6 minutes, 6 topics. Here we go. Brooklyn, first question's for you. You saw, kind of some miscommunication, some poor execution, both with the Owls special teams and turnovers. Which are you more concerned with?
For me, Dan, it's clear cut. The special teams needed help after this week. Adam Barry with that 7-yard punt making headlines, of course. He ended the day with 32 average punting yard distance. Not too hot there. They did look pretty good, though, when they had that blocked point after attempt. So other than that, though, a whole lot of blunders, obviously starting the game off not on the right foot with that offsides kickoff, having to do that twice. I don't know. I'm going to say that the special teams is definitely the biggest concern right now for the Owls.
I'm going to disagree with you. Look, special teams is absolutely important, and you need to execute those well in order to win football games. And this was a strong point for the Owls last season. Ed Foley leaves. It seems to go down just a little bit. But I'm going to say the turnovers is clearly the more important thing here. Look, Anthony Russo had 14 touchdowns, 14 interceptions a season ago. His decision-making needs to improve. He had a bad interception against Bucknell. There was another bad interception against Maryland and nearly had a second if it weren't for the too many men on the field call for the Terps. Also, you can't fumble the ball twice. One of the turnovers was actually on a special teams play. The punt hits Freddie Johnson. You got to have better awareness when the ball's in the air. But Jagger Gardner puts the ball on the ground. They lost the turnover battle against Maryland 3-1. If you continue to do that, especially losing the turnover battle by more than one, you're not going to continue to win football games.
I can see your point, but hey, if it weren't for that outstanding defensive performance, they're lucky that they picked up the slack for that special teams. But on to question number 2, Dan, do you agree with Maryland's play calling later in the game?
No, absolutely not. Look, you're trying to put the ball in your best player's hands, and Anthony McFarland torched the Owls all day long. But try a pass play. You got it down to 4th and 1. The Owls saw that play coming from a mile away. Sean Bradley was waiting for Anthony McFarland before he even got handed the ball. It got way too predictable. Try and let Josh Jackson roll out of the pocket. Do something to create a little bit of miscommunication, at least the Owls covering the pass in the end zone. If you continually stick to the run, play after play after play, that's why you get stuffed on the goal line, not once, but twice.
Yeah, Dan, I'm going to agree with you here that I disagree with Maryland's play calling. You just saw 4 instances of why this point stands true. Continue feeding it to the ball to Anthony McFarland, and the only thing that's going to happen is Sean Bradley waiting on the other side.
Now, we saw something on Saturday against Maryland that we don't always get to see at Lincoln Financial Field. A lot of logistics. Sometimes the Eagles are playing the same week. We didn't see it against Bucknell. We had the end zone diamonds. Brooklyn, how'd you like it?
I am a huge fan of the end zone diamonds. Look at them. Look how nice they look. Come on, Dan.
No.
Who wants a plain end zone? Nobody wants a plain end zone. That is exactly what the Owls need to complete their game day look inside the link. Customizing it, just taking it up a level. I am all for those diamonds.
I want to take the economics route here. It costs $10,000 for Temple to paint those end zones. It's already expensive enough to be using Lincoln Financial Field. That $10,000 could be buying nicer uniforms, extra equipment, just so we can have diamonds in the end zone for a one-game occurrence that just adds extra work. I think it's unnecessary. That's just me.
Well, I think it's worth all $10,000. But all right, let's check this tweet out from Kyle Gauss of OwlScoop.com. Temple receiving 7 top 25 votes in the coaches poll, putting them at number 35 in the nation. Dan, what do you think about this? You think that they should be ranked right now in the top 25?
Not yet. Look, Temple has had 2 very impressive wins. You beat Bucknell, and that's a week 1 opponent that I know Rod Carey doesn't want to sneeze at any opponent, but they're not a very strong team. They're an FCS team. Then you get Maryland, who wasn't really supposed to be on the radar as much as they were coming into week 3, and you beat them. They were a ranked team. I'm not trying to downgrade that, but they're, I think, very appropriately rated. If they continue to succeed, then you get into that ranking conversation. And they're already in the ranking conversation. They're on the radar. They're starting to gain some national exposure here. But let's back it up with a win over Buffalo, continue to succeed throughout the course of the season, and then when it's the Owls' time, they'll get ranked.
I agree, Dan, with your point. I do think that the Owls deserve their ranking as of right now. Of course, all eyes are on them, though, as we continue to get into their schedule later this year. Maybe this conversation can get a little bit more serious if they pull out a nice W against the Bulls. And then, of course, heading into Georgia Tech, all eyes will be on the Owls there as well. So not yet. I do not think that they deserve a spot in the top 25 yet, but they are definitely a contender. So keep your eyes out for them.
I'm glad you brought up Georgia Tech, because Temple football has had 3 people to hold the office of head coach of the Owls in the past calendar year. Of course, now it's Rod Carey, but Jeff Collins, who was the Owls coach a season ago, and Manny Diaz, who took over as the coach for 17 days. Well, Collins at Georgia Tech and Diaz at University of Miami, respectively, they're each 1-2, and the Owls are going to get a crack at Georgia Tech. Are the Owls going to finish with better records than one, if not both of them?
Dan, I like that question a whole lot. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think that the Owls are going to end up with a better record than Jeff Collins and his Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. And here's why. That easy blowout loss to Clemson week 1, they got that out of the way. But I don't think anyone really expected them to perform as poorly as they did against the Citadel. Their second loss to the Citadel. Yes, the Citadel. So I think going forward, if that's an indicator of how the rest of their season is going to play out, I don't think that they're going to shape up too nicely. Miami, on the other hand, Manny Diaz down there in his Canes, I think that Temple could end up with a similar record, definitely not as tough work cut out for them as the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, I'm going to agree here. Look, I'm not writing off either team completely yet, especially Collins, who we knew was susceptible to those slow starts when he was the head coach of the Owls. But losing to the Citadel is bad, and they do not look good through 3 weeks at all. Miami definitely has some winnable games down the stretch of the season, but let's remember, wins are not always equivalent to wins in college football. This is not the NFL. This is why you have strength of schedule. This is why you have voting on rankings. The Owls will absolutely be contending to get as many, if not more than wins, definitely more possible with Georgia Tech, but also with Miami as well.
Sure, Dan. The Owls are heading up to Buffalo this weekend. Obviously, you just heard Rod Carey call it in the press conference, their first business trip. How do you think that the Owls will handle the Bulls? What's your prediction?
I'm expecting a tough game in the trenches. He did mention the offensive and defensive line are tough, but their passing game is not very good. Going to have to rely a lot on the run, which plays in the hands of the Owls well. I'm predicting a 2-touchdown win. I think this Owls team will travel. I think they get that they just beat a team who kind of sleptwalked into their third matchup once they got ranked. This team can smell being ranked. If they were to go up to Buffalo, and a lot of these players, by the way, last year were on the team that lost to Buffalo. If they were to go in and take Buffalo lightly, it would be incredibly foolish of them.
Well, our producer's going ahead and egging us on there. We may have gotten it wrong last week, but I promise you, I think that we are secure with this point that the Owls are going to pull out a W against the Bulls. The offense was cooking week 1. That bye week got the defense where they needed to be. I think they have the moving parts, and I'm really expecting that total package to come together for this week's matchup. Well, we have to settle down, but stay with us.
Yeah, when we come back, we take a look around the AAC.
Welcome back to Inside the Nest. Temple is proving themselves to be a powerful force in the East, but let's take a look at the rest of the AAC through week 3. In the West, Navy gained an early head start in the Americans West Division race, beating ECU in the first conference game of the season. SMU is 3-0 for the first time since 1984 after the Mustangs took down Texas State on Saturday. And back in the East, the Owls only come second to number 15 UCF. The Knights are off to a 3-0 red-hot start to the season. The Knights are crazy. They haven't lost a regular season game since I was in high school. And the AAC went 7-2 in non-conference games in week 3. The 7 non-conference wins improved the AAC's collective record to 21-10 in 2019. The conference is 20-4 against unranked opponents and has gone 17-0 against teams outside the Power 6 conferences.
Full conference play hasn't started yet, but there's still plenty to keep up with around the AAC. UCF and Houston are 2 teams widely considered to be contending for the top spots in their respective divisions. They were in action on Saturday, starting with UCF. Aaron Robinson intercepts the pass, with UCF already up 7-0, nearly takes it in for 6. UCF punches it in, takes a 14-0 lead. Dylan Gabriel, he hits Trey Nixon for the 38-yard touchdown. UCF takes a 21-0 lead. Gabriel now connecting with Gabriel Davis for another 38-yard touchdown. UCF 28, Stanford 7. and UCF won that one 45-27. Elsewhere in the AAC, we'll go to Houston. De'Ara King hits Marquez Stevenson for the 13-yard touchdown. Washington State quarterback Anthony Gordon hits Aesop Winston Jr. for the 39-yard score. Game's tied at 7. Gordon hits Desmond Patman for the 39-yard touchdown. 21-14 Washington State. Houston cuts the lead to 4. Travell Harris makes the catch in the end zone to give the Cougars a 10-point fourth quarter lead. Washington State wins 31-24.
And that was two of the top teams in the AAC. Now let's take a look at some players from around the conference who have excelled through 3 weeks. First up, Dylan Gabriel, UCF's true freshman quarterback out of Hawaii, passed for 347 yards and 4 touchdowns against Stanford. He was named Walter Camp National Player of the Week, and he's the 4th UCF player to get this award since 2004, first UCF quarterback to do so since Mackenzie Milton. Gabriel leads the AAC in passing touchdowns with 9. Right behind him, though, is Anthony Russo with 7.
Going to go to running back Xavier Jones, SMU's redshirt senior. He's rushed for 7 touchdowns in 3 games. He had 10 touchdowns in 2015, 9 in 2017, 7 through 3, and he's on track for some wild numbers. Second in the AAC in rushing. Keep in mind, SMU's opponent thus far, Arkansas State, North Texas, and Texas State.
And then let's go ahead and look at Alex Turner, ECU's senior defensive lineman who's averaging 6 tackles per game with 3 sacks on the year. He's tied for second in the AAC with Temple's Ifan Maijay and Michael Pitts from Cincy. Turner is tied for second in the AAC for tackles for loss with 5 along with Maijay. And we are starting to wrap up our coverage today on Inside the Nest, but don't forget OwlSports Update is live on Thursday. Tune into TUTV at noon for Sean McGeehan and Brian Steinmetz at the desk. It's been quite the exciting week for Temple Athletics. You know about the football, but the field hockey team, men's soccer, and volleyball were all also winners over the weekend. They will catch you up on it all.
That'll do it for us here at Inside the Nest. For Brooklyn Vaughn and our entire crew, I'm Dan Wilson. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Have a great week, everybody.